What's up guys, welcome back today to another video on this channel. Hope you're all doing amazing and fantastic. So in the previous videos made on this channel, if you watched them, you would know that I mentioned I've been rereading the Harry Potter series all the way from the first book to the last book with an incredibly fresh mind. And when I say last book, I do mean Cursed Child, because JK has confirmed it has to be considered canon, so I read it. And just admit it, ever since we all started reading the Harry Potter series, throughout the series until the last book, we all detested Severus Snape. We always saw him as a bully of a teacher, that one teacher who treats specific students nicely, and he doesn't treat other children properly. He's extremely biased, you can say. So it was always like a annoying factor to have Severus Snape in the scene and see how Harry and all reacted to him and how no one really liked him. Harry, Ron, all of the Gryffindors, all of the Ravenclaws, all of the Hufflepuffs, they detested him. The only people who actually liked him were his own house, Slytherin, since he was biased towards them. But then finally, towards the end of the book, we come to know the truth about how many sacrifices he made for Harry Potter and for all the good things that were bound to happen in everyone else's lives ahead were thanks to Severus Snape and Albus Dumbledore. Now, even though he wasn't Slytherin, Severus Snape was the bravest person, arguably the bravest person in the Harry Potter series. But while researching for this video, again, I saw many people debate about whether he is good or bad. People in the comment sections of other videos were arguing, saying that he chose the dark side. He chose to become evil. But yeah, that point is valid. But yeah, he chose to go to the dark side, but he also chose to come back. And if you're saying that people can't make mistakes, they have to be perfect, then I'm sorry, your argument isn't correct. So with that, keeping all of that in mind, today I want to discuss about the life and origins of Severus Snape, all the way from his birth till his death and the end of his life. So let's dive right into it. Before we jump into this video, it takes a long time to make these videos and to come up with scripts for these videos, so it's super appreciated if you take the time out to subscribe. The red button is waiting for you down, and let's move on to the life of Severus Snape. Thank you so much. Into the video. So Severus Snape was born to Eileen Prince and Tobias Snape. Eileen was a witch and Tobias was a muggle, making Severus Snape half-blood. Now, his parents used to argue a lot. They used to argue all the time, and Snape used to feel extremely uncomfortable, and he was super eager to turn 11 and go off to live in Hogwarts. Obviously, I doubt that he ever wanted to return for the Easter holidays and Christmas holidays. He just wanted to be free of that life. When he was 11, he watched a young Lily Evans across from the lake where she used to see all of her magical traits blooming. He used to watch her hidden away, and one day he revealed himself to her, telling her that she was a witch. At that point, she didn't actually know what she was, and she took offense to that, thinking, how can he call me a witch? That is something that is quite offensive. But then he explained a little bit more that all the things she's able to do, make flowers fly on her own, make them bloom all of a sudden on her own, those are due to magic. And Lily Evans here was a muggle born, meaning both her parents were muggles. So therefore, Lily Evans was a witch, yet her sister Petunia, who later on takes care of Harry in all of the Harry Potter books, was a muggle. So Snape told her that she was a muggle and Lily was a witch. One day, after Lily started trusting Snape, they found a letter which Petunia had written to Dumbledore, which stated that since Lily had received her letter, Petunia was eager to receive her letter as well, thinking that maybe Dumbledore made a mistake. She basically begged Dumbledore to take her into Hogwarts, which his reply came back, kindly enough, that it was not possible and he was extremely sorry since she was a muggle. Later on, when Severus Snape and Lily Evans are climbing the train to Hogwarts, Petunia tells them that they are both freaks going to a school for weirdos. She even repeats this in the Philosopher's Stone when Harry actually finds out he's a wizard. She says that everyone thought she was the greatest, but I was the one who saw her for what she truly was, a freak. On the Hogwarts Express, Lily and Snape boarded the same compartment. Over there, Snape was telling Lily that she better be in Slytherin after she was crying after what Petunia said to her. So Snape was trying to encourage her, saying, I'll be in Slytherin, you better be in Slytherin. At the same point, James Potter and Sirius Black entered the same apartment, and side discussing about which house they were going to be in. So Sirius asked James which house he wants to be in, so he says Gryffindor, where dwell the brave at heart, like my dad. At this point, Snape heard this and he let out a small disparaging noise, to which James and Sirius immediately reacted, saying, "Why, you have a problem with that?" So Snape says, "No, if you'd rather be brawny than brainy." Sirius interjects and says, "Well, where are you hoping to go, seeing that you're neither?" So they both roared with laughter, and Lily told them to get lost, and she and Snape just stood up and left the compartment. James Potter said some final words to Snape, saying, "See you later, Snivelus." In Hogwarts, unfortunately for Snape, Lily was sorted into Gryffindor, and Snape obviously was sent to Slytherin. Lucius Malfoy, who was a prefect at that time, clapped him on the back and welcomed him warmly. While studying at Hogwarts, Snape excelled at almost all the subjects, and he was the best at potions and defense against the dark arts. In the books, it's mentioned he knew more dark magic than most of the 6th and 7th years combined. At this point in time, Snape nicknamed himself the Half-Blood Prince on account of him being half-blood and half a prince, since his mother's maiden name was Prince, Eileen Prince. So he nicknames himself the Half-Blood Prince and created several spells and wrote them down in a potions book. He even altered his potions book to give better results than the instructions that were written in there. This is the same potions book that Harry Potter will find in his 6th year at Hogwarts later on in life. James and Snape had many clashes during this year, and Dumbledore even told Harry in the Philosopher's Stone that, quote-unquote, they did rather detest each other. Now, Remus Lupin was a werewolf, and he wasn't able to go to Hogwarts for a long time. But Dumbledore decided that if certain precautions were taken and he was put to a safe place during all the full moons, there was no reason why he couldn't attend Hogwarts. So, obviously, Remus Lupin became friends with James Potter, Sirius Black, and Peter Pettigrew in school, and they used to take him to a place which Dumbledore had created called the Shrieking Shack. And he had also planted a tree known as the Whomping Willow, which would attack students who would come near. There was a certain way on how to get in, which only the 4 Marauders knew. So Sirius had told Snape how to get into there, and Snape had suspicions that Remus was a werewolf, because he saw him leaving every full moon and not being found anywhere, him having scratches after every full moon. So he really suspected that Lupin was a werewolf, and he was right. Obviously, Snape was an incredibly smart character. So when Snape followed Sirius's instructions on how to get into the Whomping Willow and into the Shrieking Shack, he was saved by James Potter, who stopped him from going inside, where Lupin would have torn him apart. Snape refused to believe this, saying that he only did that to save his own friends and his own skin. He couldn't at all bear to be in the debt of the man he hated the most. But this also gives us a slight soft spot to James Potter, showing that he wasn't all bad. One time when Snape finished his owls, he was brought out and he was just revising over his paper or something, when James and Sirius decided to go ahead and bully him. So, in front of Lily Evans. So what actually happened was Snape was trying to stop, yet he was being cornered by 2-on-1. So Sirius and James were both together bullying Snape. At this point, Lily Evans comes in and interjects, saying that, "Stop it, what has he ever done to you?" So James says it's more than the fact that he exists. So James' actual explanation for bullying Snape was just the fact that he exists. That is extremely weird. While Lily and James were arguing, Snape found his wand and slashed a deep cut across James' face. James got angry and retaliated by hanging Snape upside down in the air. All the surrounding students laughed, and even Lily's mouth twitched, like she almost restrained from laughing. Then she immediately got angry and told James to let Snape down. At this point, Snape was filled with bitterness and anger, and he shouted, "I don't need help from filthy mudbloods like her." Lily was stunned, gave him a glaring look, and couldn't imagine how her childhood friend could offend her like this. "Fine," she said, and she walked away. "I won't bother you again." And she let James take out all his anger for her on Snape. Later on, Snape found her by insisting that he was going to sleep outside the Gryffindor common room if she didn't come, and tried to apologize to her. She said she wasn't mad about being called a mudblood. He called all the people of her blood mudbloods, so why was she any different? What she was actually annoyed about was the fact that he was choosing to become a Death Eater. All of his friends were going to become Death Eaters. They couldn't wait to join Lord Voldemort. And Snape didn't refute this, meaning Lily was correct. She pointed out to Lucius Malfoy and several other students who did indeed later on go on to become Death Eaters and follow Lord Voldemort. They all went their own ways, and Snape became a Death Eater, and he also became one of Voldemort's most loyal followers. At this time, Voldemort told him to go and apply for a job at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry so that he could spy on Albus Dumbledore for him. It was at this point that Severus Snape overheard a prophecy that concerned Harry and Lord Voldemort. Yes, the same prophecy that Sybil Trelawney told Dumbledore when she came to interview for a job position at Hogwarts. Snape overheard this and immediately relayed this information to Voldemort, who came to know that it could either be Neville Longbottom or Harry Potter. He decided to target Harry Potter. Notice that, as Dumbledore mentions in the 6th book, I think, Half-Blood Prince, that he didn't choose the pure blood who he focuses so much on, like Neville Longbottom, yet the half-blood like himself, Harry Potter. It was at this point that Snape realized he'd made a grave mistake and that he had put Lily's life in danger. He begged to meet with Dumbledore, and when Dumbledore agreed, he said that please protect Lily. Dumbledore says, "You disgust me. You do not care for the life of her husband and child. They can die as long as you get what you want." So he says, "Fine, protect all of them. Just protect the entire family." Dumbledore says, "What will I get in return?" Snape calmly looks around and says, "Anything." Dumbledore put all the Potters in a safe house, but after all, the Potters had put their trust in Peter Pettigrew, and Peter Pettigrew immediately told Lord Voldemort where his parents were hiding, and Voldemort went in, killed James, killed Lily, even though Snape asked to spare her life, and then tried to kill Harry unsuccessfully, ripping his own body apart. Later on, Snape then asked Dumbledore that you say you would protect them, yet now they are dead. So Dumbledore explains about Wormtail's betrayal and says that now you should not let Lily die in vain. Help me protect Harry Potter. So Snape says he doesn't need protection, the Dark Lord is gone. Then this is when Dumbledore tells Snape the Dark Lord will return, and at that point Harry Potter will be in grave, grave danger. So Snape agreed but made Dumbledore promise not to tell anyone because he couldn't bear for everyone to know that he was taking care of his worst enemy, James Potter's son. Dumbledore reluctantly agreed, saying, "I should make the promise that I'll never reveal the best of you, Severus." Moreover, we come to know here that Snape was the first person ever to know that the Dark Lord will return, meaning on the date that the Dark Lord vanished, Dumbledore already knew that he was going to return. And I can just tell you, Snape wasn't afraid of the Dark Lord. He wasn't afraid at all, and I will go as far as to say that I think he probably wanted to meet Voldemort again so he could exact his revenge. That's how strong his emotions. So he continued to take potions classes at Hogwarts, and when Horace Slughorn retired, he took up as the head of Slytherin House. In Harry's first year, when Quirrell was trying to curse Harry to fall off a broomstick, it was Snape here who was performing counter curses to save Harry. Entire time he was helping Harry throughout. According to Dumbledore, this was his way of paying James back for the debt that he was in, though he still treated Harry, Hermione and Ron as horribly as he could and preferred students from his own house such as Draco Malfoy. One interesting comment I read was why, it's completely theoretical, but why Harry and Hermione and Ron are hated by Snape. Harry has Lily's eyes, Ron is a redhead, and Hermione is a mudblood, so to say. A muggle-born, red-headed, green-eyed trio, which reminded him quite strongly of Lily. Though this might not be the case, it's still super fun to think about. During the Triwizard Tournament, Snape felt the dark mark blackening, but unlike Karkaroff, he wasn't scared. He had been stripped of all emotions. He was not scared of the Dark Lord anymore. Finally, when Voldemort returns, Dumbledore secretly told Snape to go to Voldemort 2 hours later after all the Death Eaters had left. He did this so that Snape could go there and tell Voldemort that I was where you told me to be. If I had crazily come to find you like Bellatrix, I would have been in Azkaban, and what use would that be to anyone? Yet here I am now, under your orders, watching over Dumbledore, and I have so much information to relay to you. So obviously Voldemort didn't complain because he was getting 13 years of Dumbledore's information. So this way Snape continued to be a triple agent. He was actually for Dumbledore, made Voldemort think that he was for him, but later on we come to know that he was always for Dumbledore. Snape was also very skilled at occlumency, and Voldemort, being the great legilimens that he was, still couldn't see through Snape's thoughts, and that's how never discovered what he truly was. In Harry's sixth year, Dumbledore put on the ring, which was a Horcrux, and a powerful curse spread through his body. Snape trapped the curse in one hand, telling him he had only 1 year to live. This was when Dumbledore told Snape to kill him. Dumbledore said this for a few reasons. One was he didn't want Draco Malfoy to go through the terrible task of killing another human being. Secondly, he also wanted that since their death was planned among the two of them, the power of the Elder Wand would die with him so that Voldemort couldn't possess it later. And moreover, Bellatrix makes Snape make an unbreakable vow with Narcissa to protect her son and kill Dumbledore, which he gladly does because he has to anyways kill Dumbledore. Then finally, one day, he breaks and tells Dumbledore he doesn't want to do this anymore. Dumbledore tells him, come to my office today, and at that point he tells him that Harry Potter is a Horcrux and he needs to die. Snape says, you're raising him like a pig for slaughter. All this time I thought we were protecting him for Lily, and you've been raising him for like a pig for slaughter. Dumbledore says, don't tell me now you've grown to care for the boy. Snape says for him and launches out a Patronus, which was the same Patronus as Lily, a doe. Dumbledore turns towards Snape, moved, and says, Lily, after all this time. Snape says, always. After Snape killed Dumbledore, Harry ran after him, screaming, calling him a coward. That was one thing Snape wasn't. He had given his life for the boy in front of him. His entire face turned inhuman, demented, and he screamed, don't call me coward. Painting of Dumbledore guided Snape on how to go through giving the Sword of Gryffindor to Harry Potter and to relay information partially to Voldemort time to time without telling him the full crucial details but almost the whole plan. This is how the Death Eaters didn't know that there were going to be 7 Potters in the skies, yet he knew that they were going to be making Harry travel through the skies. This was when Snape was trying to protect George by getting rid of a Death Eater's hand but accidentally shot out George's ear. Then when Harry comes into Hogwarts, one day he tells Snape that how dare you stand where he stood, referring to Dumbledore. And at this point Minerva McGonagall steps up and tries to fight Snape. The pain in his eyes was too much. He wanted her to understand, but she didn't. Just think about it for a second. Snape only died because Voldemort supposed that he was the previous owner of the wand, which we come to know later on he wasn't, because it was Draco Malfoy who had disarmed Dumbledore on the Astronomy Tower, because Dumbledore had put a full body bind on Harry Potter, thus losing the chance to defend himself. It was Draco Malfoy who had used Expelliarmus on Dumbledore, which later on Harry, in Malfoy manner, removed Draco's wand from his hand. Therefore, all of Draco's wand's allegiance was transferred to Harry Potter, meaning even the Elder Wand at that point alone belonged to Harry Potter. But still, the only reason you died was because you were in Voldemort's way to victory, and you needed to be removed for him to supposedly succeed. So Harry was distraught when he came to know that the man he hated, the man that he had been viciously hating, abusing, making fun of for so long, was the man who had sacrificed everything for him. The man he thought to be the ultimate villain was the ultimate hero. Using all the knowledge that Snape's memories gave him, including all the parts which Snape never revealed to anyone, his life, his past with Lily, his life in school, how he was bullied by James Potter, all that stuff, finally, while talking to Voldemort, Harry Potter himself told Voldemort and all the surrounding people in Hogwarts that what Severus Snape had done was beyond something he could imagine. Voldemort never ever suspected Severus Snape because there was no way he could have ever contemplated the multi-layer character and the complex love that Snape had for Lily Potter. After all, we do know Voldemort's weakness is love. He cannot comprehend it. He doesn't know what all it can change. We know that Harry respects Severus after this because he names his own son Albus Severus Potter. A really super interesting thing I noticed while researching for this video was that Harry's first words about Snape were, "Who is that man?" And his last words about Snape were, "The bravest man I ever knew." He sought the answer in the beginning, thought he found it to be the worst man ever, and then in the end found the true answer. He thought it was all Snape all along, he was the villain, but it was not. Through and through, it was Voldemort who ripped apart these lives, Voldemort who destroyed all these feelings, Voldemort who turned a happy person into a horrible, emotionless being. Finally, Harry Potter is the boy who lived, Draco Malfoy is the boy who had no choice, and Severus Snape was the man who was never happy. Everyone finally got the true answer, and if we take in Cursed Child, if we include Cursed Child, there is a biography on Harry Potter written by Rita Skeeter. This biography tells the world about what Severus Snape did. So later on in the book, Scorpius Malfoy told Severus Snape in an alternate timeline that Harry had named his son after him, and over there Snape was deeply moved when he came to know that the whole wizarding world knew the truth about all his sacrifices. Lastly, and last but not the least, in the movie series of Harry Potter, Severus Snape has been wonderfully portrayed by Alan Rickman. Rest in peace, he was an amazing actor. I cannot imagine anyone to act as Snape other than Alan Rickman. So it was an amazing job that he did. And when you say Snape, I imagine Alan Rickman. Now there you have it. Severus Snape was one of the most complex characters, and he had so many things. There were many reasons why he was bad, but there are so many more reasons why he's good. To all of you out there who's saying that he chose the dark side, he chose to bully students, he chose to be a hated teacher, you have to remember that he chose to take care of Harry Potter, chose to give his whole life to Dumbledore, chose to finally accept that he had to die in the end, and chose to continue loving Lily even after her death. If you are trying to suggest that he couldn't have made mistakes, no matter what the magnitude of those mistakes was, and he rectified them by doing all of this, if you don't believe that, I'm sorry, but you cannot count yourself a fan of the Harry Potter series. It's incredibly weird after reading the final book, after reading all the sacrifices that Severus Snape made, after reading everything that J.K. Rowling had to say about it. Obviously, J.K. Rowling wrote about this because she wanted the world to know about the sacrifices of Hogwarts' most hated teacher. If after reading all of this you think he is a negative character, I am so sorry. That might just be your opinion, but I am here to contest it. On that note, thank you so much for watching this video. This video was again tad on the longer side, but I needed to make this video to just get a few points out there. Key points which particularly were like this: he is bad, every person makes bad choices. He is good because his good was much greater than his bad. Severus Snape was a wonderful character, and till date you might say Molly Weasley was the bravest character. She raised all the kids including Harry. Dumbledore was the bravest character, he lived through all that pain. Harry Potter was the bravest character, he lived through all that pain. But at some point, viewers, it was all of them who attained happiness. Yet Severus Snape, the man who was never happy. Thank you so much for watching this video.